Ladies and gentlemen, meet the brand spanking new Mercedes-Benz GLC. You may know it as the GLK. And when I say all new, I mean all new. New engine, new chassis, new interior. But you know what? Let's take it for a ride and see what Mercedes has done. And that is coming up right now on the Fast Lane Car. Rock and roll. Now we're rolling. All right, guys, I'm in the new Mercedes GLC. I almost said GLK, Michael, because that's what it used to be, with my man Michael Frank here, who writes for, well, Outside Magazine, and he's my driving partner today. So we're going to do a little bit of a first impression behind the wheel of this, and this is important. This is something that I think we need to stress. Oftentimes, when we do these programs, manufacturers will refresh a car, right? Yes. So let's say there's a 4-year period that the car is being sold. 2 years into it, like the recent Passat, they'll refresh it. So they'll give it a new front end. They may give it a different engine option. This car, completely new. Completely new. From the ground up.
Completely new nomenclature. And,
yes.
and I think that's confusing, but I actually do think that they said, you know, C as in C-Class helps you know what they mean when they say GLC. GLK meant nothing.
Yes. Yeah, so now it's very similar to their sedan lineup. So GLC is like a C-Class, and you can think of it almost as a lifted C. And in fact, it has the same engine that's in the C-Class. Now, under the hood of the old GLK was a 6-cylinder. This has a 4-cylinder, an inline-4 turbo, 2-liter that puts out 241 horsepower and 273 pound-foot of torque. And Mercedes-Benz has paired it to get this, a 9-speed transmission with paddle shifters. And best of all, Mercedes says it's 20% more fuel efficient than the old 6. First and foremost, it's bigger, right? So it's 5 inches longer and 2 inches wider. And they've used that space by giving you actually a lot more backseat room. So 2 inches more backseat room, 2 inches more shoulder room, and then 3 inches in the back. So we've got a lot more space in this car.
18% more cargo.
18% more cargo. And this pocket here, 200% bigger.
Yeah, right. You could pretty much put 3 48-ounce big gulps in there and you'd be good.
Yeah, and the way they did that was actually clever engineering, right? They took the speaker, which is normally housed in the door, and they moved it so that it opened up all the space over here to store water bottles and, you know, gear and such.
And they moved it higher so you can hear it better.
Yeah.
It's not down by your feet. It's closer to your ears, so that was clever.
Hey, let's give them the rundown. You know, this car starts at about $39,000, but what is ours sticker at? Yeah.
58.4.
And what does that entail? How do we get to 58 from 39?
The Designo Cardinal Red metallic paint on the outside, that's $1,000.
Yeah.
That's a bargain.
That's actually a bargain for Mercedes color, yeah.
Premium package, it's blind spot, that's pretty good. Sirius heated front seats, keyless go. So some of those things are, you know, not too bad. But we start getting crushed by things like driver assistance, which is lane keeping, pre-safe, etc. Steering assist, speed assist. Panorama Sunroof, which is actually pretty cool.
How much is that? All that technology? Is that a power package?
$2,800.
Well, yeah.
Sport package, which is sort of basically a trim package. You get hotter looking wheels, you get 20 inchers, things like that.
Yep.
You're in for another $3,000. But the panoramic sunroof is maybe worth it.
Yeah, I love that.
That's $1,500, but you have light. You have a lot more light in the back, especially, so less car sick.
Yeah, it's becoming a standard now, and it's a great thing. It's probably one of the automotive trends that I most enjoy. One of the automotive trends that I least enjoy, actually, is this. The Germans seem to love to put kind of these iPad-like Navi screens that do not retract, except, of course, for the Audis, right? In the middle of the dashboard. And I know that's the thing right now, but it just seems kind of tacked on to me.
Well, the biggest problem is it looks like a touchscreen. It's not a touchscreen. Everything is controlled through this sort of mouse-like device, but you don't really get very accurate control. And as the driver, it's incredibly distracting because you have to look at the screen, and you tend to actually look at the mouse and where the heck the mouse is. So I think it's a negative.
But you don't get fingerprints on the screen.
Oh, I've got them all over the screen.
Yeah, I mean, Mercedes has done this dual thing, right, where you can actually use your finger as you would like in a touchpad, or you could use a traditional rotary knob. And yeah, you have to look down. And when you were driving this car and you were trying to actually play your iPhone music, right? You were driving it like a drunk man because you were so busy trying
Thank God for lane keeping assist.
Yeah, thank God for lane keeping assist. Let's floor it. Let's see how it does. It's kind of leisurely. You know, this is, let's face it, this segment is more of a people hauler than an ass hauler.
It's a family car.
It's a family car, right? This segment is dominated by the Lexus RX.
Yes, completely.
Now this GLC competes with the X cars in the luxury crossover segment. What do I mean by that? Well, the BMW X3, X4, the RDX, the XC60, the SRX, the MKX, and of course the segment leader, the Lexus LX. Doesn't have an X, but nevertheless, it's a very competitive vehicle in the class. It does tend to skew female. It does tend to skew more toward the luxury end of the spectrum and not toward the sports car end of the sport spectrum. Now, Mercedes says that this is a truck, which I disagree, but anyway, that's what they say. And as a truck, that it can go off-road. And you can actually get air suspension, which we don't have.
Which we don't, even at
$58,000, we don't have. But even with air suspension, we asked, and you can't really get a lot of ground clearance. But let's face it, you know, the most these things are going to go over is probably curbs.
Snow.
And snow, yeah, but they're not going to be like wandering into the wilds looking for moose, right? People are going to use this to bring kids to and from school, so it's basically a big station wagon.
It's a lifted C-Class, yeah, with more cargo haul.
Now, the one thing I do really like about this car is oftentimes when you get in a car, there's always something that is just a little bit kind of on the cheap side, right? So, for instance, you'll find like maybe that elephant skin plastic, but here, everywhere I touch, everywhere I look, there's just a sense of quality and of workmanship. Look at these little controls. Like there's a little click right there. Did you hear that? Just a little click on center.
Yeah.
It's just jewel-like precision, right?
Yeah, very, very classy, kind of all around. Really, it's true that everything you touch, metal doesn't feel like plastic, feels like metal.
Yeah, yeah.
This wood is, you know, really gorgeous, and you know, not sort of your typical, you know, browns and faux sometime related to a tree, but not currently.
And the C-Class has done an immaculate job of actually taking the whole segment up a notch, right? This isn't a C-Class, it's a GLC. Yeah, I had to think about it. But it's taken that kind of Audi bar and raised it to the next level. And I really enjoy the feel of this. I feel like if you're in an S-Class, Michael, you feel like you're special, right? It makes you feel special. This doesn't make you feel special, but it makes you feel like you're driving a quality piece of well-engineered machinery.
Well, the handling, too, even though it's more family car, in general, is a little tighter than, say, the Bogey RX.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit less soft. It's a little bit more German. Just, you know, be straightforward about it. It feels like a German engineered car. This is the kind of thing that you think about when you want a German car.
And then over here, there's a little switch called dynamic, and you can change the way that the car basically is set up. So you can go from individual to Sport Plus to Comfort. So right now I'm in Sport Plus, and what that does is if you had air suspension, you can actually adjust the suspension, which would be a big change.
Yes.
But we don't have that. But it will adjust the steering, so I just felt it firm up, so it makes it heavier.
Tighter.
It will adjust the way that the 9-speed automatic shifts.
Yes.
So it changes the shift
More
points.
aggressive.
Yeah, and it will change the throttle tip-in. So that when you do that, you get a little bit more instantaneous power.
And conversely, in stop and go, if you switch to eco mode, you get automatic start-stop.
Yeah.
So you save some gas.
Yeah. And I think
around Atlanta, you want to save some gas.
Yeah. Now, Mercedes is following a well-worn path to success in the American car business. And basically, that means you make the car bigger, and this one is 2 inches wider, 5 inches longer, which translates to more legroom in the back and more shoulder room. And, of course, make it more fuel efficient and keep the price about the same, but increase the content in the car. And usually when you do all that, it means you sell a lot more cars. And I think that Mercedes will do that exact thing with this new GLC. And what's certainly noteworthy about this vehicle is a 9-speed. It's not Mercedes' first use of the 9-speed, but it's certainly one of their kind of more mainstream uses. So now it's becoming a mainstream vehicle. And you do have paddle shifters, so you can kind of, you know, somewhat control it yourself. Of course, the car will always, I'm going to try to let me put it in nine. So I'm trying to put it in the 9th gear. I just did, but it doesn't like it.
Right.
It's too low.
It's too low.
Yeah. So.
No Autobahn here.
No Autobahn here. And, my question is, and we both kind of come from an endurance sports world, and you remember not that long ago when the triple front ring was commonplace and 30 gears were the standard?
Yeah, right.
And then people realized that you really didn't need 30.
Sometimes you don't want to go to 11.
Yeah, right. Basically, it was marketing, right? So you added weight, you added complexity, but you didn't add to the spread of gears. You just added
more gears.
More gears in between.
In between.
Yeah, so instead of having 20 gears, you had 30 gears.
Although Mercedes does claim that this is the broadest ratio of any 9-speed on the market.
9.15,
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why it doesn't want 9th gear right now. You're going 65, and that's like 1100 RPM, and it's not a diesel, so it can't handle that.
And so what ended up happening in the bike world is everybody went back to the compact double, right? Because that
or
was
even 1x11.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was less weight, less complexity. And I'm wondering at what point car makers will go at 11, right? That one gear too much. Is it 10? Is it 12? Is it 15? Because the CVT potentially is unlimited, right? It can be any gear.
Yeah, and they always drive like crap.
Yeah, we know how much we like CVTs.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know whether 10 is 11 or whether 11 is 11. Right now we have 9.
We'll figure it out. Now I do like the look of this car. The old one was kind of ungainly, right? It had kind of that low hood and that tall kind of canopy.
Greenhouse.
Greenhouse. And it just looked kind of ungainly. It kind of looked like the ugly duckling of this class.
Yeah.
I do this for a living, and I gotta be honest, I have a hard time keeping the names of all the Mercedes straight, right? Because they're really changing everything around. They're introducing a lot more models. It used to be very simple, right? You had A-Class, B-Class, C-Class, S-Class, and now E-Class, and now we've got GLC, GLE, GLS. It's pretty daunting, and also Mercedes is splitting not just the names, but also the different kinds of cars they're bringing to the table, right? There used to be a time when, just like BMW, Mercedes had a handful of models, and now there's probably 24, and there are 9 more coming next year.
9 more coming.
Yeah.
Some of that will also be along these lines, though. It will be rebooting. It will be saying, this was this, and now it's going to be that.
Yeah.
And changing the flavor. They might be getting more confusing nomenclature-wise, but they might be getting a little bit easier for the customer if you just think C, E, S, and forget about the letters that come ahead of it. Then you'll know what it's supposed to stand for. S is supposed to stand for S-Class.
Yeah, exactly. And this is supposed to stand for, a tall C-Class. Yeah. And it rides like, it drives really similar to a tall C-Class. It's very quiet. It's very composed. I would say, if we look at the models in the segment, right? And let's say that the BMW is more toward the sporty end, and the Lexus is more toward the, I was going to say appliance end, but that's not fair to Lexus. Let's say more toward the luxury end.
Yeah.
This one kind of splits the difference between the two. So it's, with this turbo and with this dynamic control and with this kind of German engineered Autobahn ride, it's somewhat sporty, but yet it's also very luxurious. So it's somewhere in between those two.
Yeah, I think if you're benchmarking, it's Q5.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're going to drive 2 cars in this segment and you want them to be sporty, you compare this to Q5 directly, and less to RX.
Yeah, and of course what Mercedes has done with this newest generation is they've outsized the Q5, because the Q5, is an old car, there's a new one coming, and it feels smaller, it feels tighter, it feels more like an athletic shoe, whereas this feels more like a loafer in some ways.
It's a driving shoe.
Yeah, driving shoe, yeah. It's much bigger, it feels heavier, it feels more substantial, I like it. I was not a huge fan of the GLK. I just thought it wasn't fish nor fowl, if you know what I mean. But this is
slightly more masculine.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's a little more masculine.
Yeah, that one was definitely kind of.
Although in our very brief survey of women, and their opinions of this car, they like it too.
Yeah, they like it too. Yeah.
So it's not butch. It's just a little bit more masculine.
Now the GLC starts at just over $39,000, but our test car, as optioned, was $58,000. So yeah, it can get very expensive very quickly, but for that, of course, you're getting the 3-pointed star and all that Mercedes build quality. And you gotta just love like, the details that Mercedes is putting into what is basically a near luxury segment, right? It's incredible. Now, there is a lot of technology in this car, and well, let's play with it, right? So I've got lane keep right now, and for instance, unlike other models, if you take your hand off the wheel, this will not autocorrect. So the Mercedes will say your hand's off the wheel, I'm turning the system off, and look at that, I just crossed the center line, which is not what you want to be doing.
You're in a coma.
Yeah, exactly. But if I keep my hands on the wheel, so that the Mercedes knows that there's some human control. No, I didn't autocorrect there either.
Turn it on and off again.
Yeah, let me turn it on and off. So let me turn that on and off. Okay, there we go. Lane keep assist on. All right, let's see. I'm going to keep my hand on the wheel. Let's see if it autocorrects when I hit this outside line. Yeah, there it goes. You can feel it. You can really feel it. It's really, you guys probably can't tell, but not only did the car turn the steering wheel, but it also put the brakes on. Yeah. And I love these systems as long as there's this button right here, the off button. Right? And here's my fear. Here's my fear because let's face it, autonomous cars are a topic of conversation now, especially with Tesla's almost completely autonomous software that they just installed in their newest car. And what scares me about autonomous cars is that, like planes, right? Crashes are always pilot error for the most part.
Yeah.
Right? They're never like mechanical failure. Very rare. It's always human error. And I have no doubt that at some point autonomous cars are going to be safer, more fuel efficient than human-driven cars. And so I worry that at some point some politician's going to decide that because it's safer and more fuel efficient, that if you want to come into a town like London, right, you're going to have to go all autonomous if you want to come into the city center at all. And then eventually you take that to the final extreme, right? We're all going to be like those sleeper cars in Woody Allen movie, and the only place we'll be able to actually drive cars is like in some park in Montana where you go and rent a Mustang for the day. That's my biggest fear, right? The politicians will say it's safer, it's more fuel efficient. If you want to come here, if you want to go on the highway, you got to be in autonomous mode. And not only that, they'll mandate this button won't be here anymore.
Roman, you're wrong because of the Republic of Texas.
I hope you're right, Michael. I hope you're right.
There will always be one state where you can drive. It will be Texas.
I hope you're right, because driving is one of my great pleasures. It's freedom. It's the ability to change one's course, literally and figuratively. And I hope that they don't take that away. I hope that governments don't mandate that this button is gone.
Not in our lifetimes.
Yeah, it's moving fast. It's moving fast. All right, so we've only driven this car probably for a couple hours. You drove it maybe for an hour and a half, and I've just been behind the wheel as long as we've been talking. But we don't like to do a rating on TFL because it's not fair to you and it's not fair to the automotive manufacturer. Because let's face it, I've been on these programs where I've gotten behind the wheel of a car and I've absolutely hated it. Literally, I was like, I can't stand this car, and then I get it home for a week. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, now I get it. Or vice versa, right?
Totally.
So that's why we say it's not fair to the manufacturer or to you guys to give it a rating. But if I had to give it an initial rating, I would say, they're right up there with the best in the segment, if not, at this point, one of the best.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
So far, at least initial impression-wise, I'm pretty happy with what they've done. If you don't have to option it through the roof, it's also cost competitive. If you do, we're talking about a lot of money. But one thing that is pretty great is that they're not charging a huge premium. It's about $1,500 to have all-wheel drive versus two-wheel. And you'll see in other cars in this segment, they want more money to get all-wheel. And I'm happy about the fact that they're not trying to screw you out of getting all-wheel drive or make that a tough decision.
Yeah, and they said that their split in terms of sales is about 50-50.
In a quarter of a mile, turn left.
So I think if you live in, places like you live in New York and places like I live,
Colorado.
That's the only way you're going to buy this car.
Yes, absolutely.
With the all-wheel drive. But if you live in places like
where we are now.
Now turn left.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense.
No. And in this case, clearly they've added more refinement.
Yeah.
And GLK was not only sort of an ugly duckling, it was also sort of a half-breed. It didn't feel like a Mercedes. And this car really feels like a Mercedes top to bottom.
I was looking at some old MLs, like the first generation MLs, right? And I thought to myself, that one hallmark of Mercedes throughout time has always been the fact that they're over-engineered. Right?
Absolutely.
Right. But what I mean by over-engineered is that, they engineer the car beyond the point that is commercially and financially sound or smart, or right? They always make it last longer. They always make it a little bit. And then I was looking at these old MLs, and I was looking at the headlights, and the headlights had yellowed, right? Because they were plastic. And I thought to myself, that's not Mercedes. You look at some really old like SLs, right? Those cars are vault tight. Yeah. Even though they're maybe 30 years old, yeah. But that first gen ML, you look at the headlights are yellow, like somehow Mercedes lost its way. And I think now with this next and newest generation of cars, they're kind of coming back to that, where I feel like this is over-engineered to some extent, and there's not as much cost cutting. It just feels much better.
Higher quality.
Higher quality, yeah. As always, this is Roman reporting for the Fast Lane Car. Check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and of course, real-world reviews. Oh yeah, and don't forget to click on me if you want to see more 2016 reviews, because we've got them rolling in fast and furious now. I got to get dry. See you guys next time. Ciao. Pretty good shift there. You can feel it. You know, it's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, dynamically, you know, it's a German car.
Yeah.
I did this long tirade in last video about everything being Nuremberg derived, but now I'm happy. It's derived from the, I'm sure it's not derived from the Nürburgring, but this is where, you know, that kind of engineering pays off. It's where the road gets twisty and wet, and you can actually do a little bit of spirited driving.
Make up time.
Yeah, make up time. I have to say that the steering feel isn't great.
No, it's not.
Electric steering it's just, you know, it's dead on center, but it doesn't actually convey the undulations of the road.
No, not that communicative.
No, it's more set up for comfort than it is for sheer performance.
Yeah.
But the chassis is stable. Okay, why don't you hold that bottle for a sec? I'm just gonna slam on the brakes. You ready? Here we go. Very good.
Yeah,
very good. Straight line stability in braking is very good, and ABS kicked in right away. Yeah, it's good.